Hello to all the church members, elders, and pastors from Emmanuel Church of Southern California. This is our mission report. On February 16th to 18th, we went to El Salvador. There we met Pastor Amabel, Pastor Leonel, and Pastor Kevin. We were sharing time with them, teaching about how to enjoy the gospel through the covenant prayer. After that, we had meeting with the youth leaders in order to prepare everything to start the next trip to Honduras. We were reminding the gospel message, and after that, in 18th, we started driving from El Salvador to Honduras. After 4 hours, we got to the border, and after another 8 hours, we came to the capital city of Honduras. There we met Pastor Marlon Blanco. He is the pastor who invited us to Honduras, and he took us to another church. The name of this church is Remnant of Love. The name of the pastor from that church is Pastor Santos. After he heard the gospel message by very first time, he invited us to a TV show program. There we were sharing about the gospel and also about the world evangelism. There we were talking about the fundamental problem, but also we were teaching about who Jesus is. He is the Christ who already fixed that problem. After that, we came out to the streets and we were sharing the gospel to every people that we met there. The people from that area were listening the gospel by very first time. Then we met Dennis. He is a young man and God opened his heart to receive the gospel.
¿Quién es Jesús de nuevo?
Jesús es el Hijo,
¿Y cuáles son sus tres oficios?
el rey, el sacerdote,
Ajá.
profeta.
¿Y el rey para qué?
El rey Mesías Satanás,
Aleluya.
el profeta los conecta con Dios y el sacerdote venció el pecado.
Amén. Por eso es que Jesús es quien. Amén.
Amén.
On that day, before we met him, he was really sad because 1 week ago, his little brother, only 2 years old, died in an accident. So, through the gospel, God gave him new strength. We ask you to continue praying for him and also for all his family, because God started working on that family through the gospel, through Dennis' life. In Sunday, I was invited to preach in a church. The name of this church is La Gloria de Dios. There I met Orlando and his wife. They are the pastors there, and they have been planting churches by almost 30 years. Now they are old, but they are still preaching there. When they heard the gospel, they were really happy, especially her. She said, "This is the gospel that we must believe and we must preach to all nations." So they asked us to be back again in the future, and they asked us for a training time. So now we have this big open door there. During night, Martin was invited to preach to another small church. The pastor there heard the gospel, but he has been struggling with many problems and trying to make church to work on the right way. We pray God to open their hearts so they can receive the gospel soon. In the next day, I met a missionary from the United States. His name is Timothy Horan. He and his wife opened their house to listen the gospel. After that, they asked us to visit them again to share the gospel in all the missions that they have. In the next day, we spent time with Pastor Marlon. We had Bible study with him and also his church members. We were reading the book of Genesis and we were teaching about the covenant prayer. We pray God to raise him up as the leader in Honduras. In the next day, I was invited to preach in a small church. The name of that church is Cielos Abiertos, and the name of the pastor is Josue. After I preached the message, the pastor came and he said, "You know, Pastor, this is the word I was waiting for all my life. For a long time I have been trying to know and meet who Jesus is, and I didn't get it. But today it was different. I really understood and believed that Jesus is the Christ. You know, I was tired of everything. I was tired of ministry, and I felt that I really didn't know Jesus. I want to learn more because this is the answer from God to all my life." So now we are praying God to give him grace to continue in the gospel way. We tried to go to Nicaragua, but the government closed the door for every Christian group. We know God is opening doors in the time He has prepared. Please continue praying for Nicaragua. We decided to go back to El Salvador, and there I was invited to a church. The name of this church is Celebración, and the pastor's name is Nicolás. After our Bible study, they were really excited. He and his wife asked me to continue nurturing them. Also, in that moment, I met another pastor from Cuba. His name is Arnold. He has been planting churches in Cuba for many years, and he said, "You know, I was asking God to meet you, and I am the reason why God didn't open the door for you to go to Nicaragua, because we had to meet each other." So now He invited us to go to Cuba and to continue doing the world evangelization with them. On the second day of March, we took our flight to Costa Rica. The first place that we visited, it was a church. We didn't meet the pastor, but we were preaching this gospel to the youth leaders. We pray God to let His gospel to shine in their hearts. In the next Sunday, I was invited to another church. The name of this church is Boca de Dios, and the name of the pastor is Oscar. He asked us to continue visiting them in order to nurturing them and also to continue sharing the gospel together in all that area. On the next days, we were sharing the gospel in different houses. So God started opening open rooms there. Our next place was Guatemala. There we had a training time with Pastor Hessler and also with our church there. After that, we met Pastor Mario, and he was coming also to share time together. We were teaching about the gospel, about the covenant prayer, and about how to enjoy this gospel. In the Sunday, I was invited to Pastor Mario's church. The name of this church is Jesús es el Cristo. There I was sharing the gospel, and after that, we spent time with some of the leaders and also some of the church members. After that, some pastors from that area were coming, and we were spending time with them, sharing about the gospel and also sharing about the covenant prayer. We thank God for what He is doing there in Guatemala. Our main answers in El Salvador were, God is raising up the remnants. Also open doors with pastors from there and Cuba. Pastors are believing the gospel. Our prayer topics are to continue nurturing remnants, our mission trip to Cuba, and to continue nurturing pastors. Our main answers in Honduras were, we met pastors prepared by God. God opened many doors, and God led us to meet Pastor Marlon Blanco. Our prayer topics are to continue nurturing this pastor to be the leader, to continue nurturing remnants, and to open a training time there. Our prayer topics for Nicaragua are, we pray God to open the doors to preach the gospel there, and also to open the time schedule to go back and having training time there. Our main answers in Costa Rica were, we met pastors open to the gospel. God opened the doors for open rooms, and God opened the doors for training time. We pray God to lead us to meet more pastors there, also to open the time schedule to go back soon, and we pray God to raise up the leader from that country. The main answers from Guatemala were, God is raising up faithful pastors. God led us to meet Pastor Mario, and also the church is growing. Our prayer topics are, we pray God to lead us to meet more pastors there, and also to raise up the biblical system of evangelism. We thank you for your heart, prayers, devotion, and for your support to take the gospel together to the end of the earth. Jesus is the Christ.